The encrypted message on my wife's phone changed everything. Anti-gravity specs ready for extraction tomorrow night. Tyler won't suspect his loving Rachel is feeding classified military secrets to foreign terrorists. The commander's own technology will destroy America from within. Hit like, subscribe for more betrayal stories, and comment your location. My name is Tyler Harrison, and I've spent 15 years protecting this country as a Space Command officer. I never imagined the greatest threat to national security would be sleeping next to me every night. It started 3 weeks ago when Rachel's phone buzzed during dinner. She grabbed it faster than a striking snake, her face flushing red as she read the message. "Just work stuff," she mumbled, but her hands were shaking. Rachel worked as a research coordinator at the local university. Nothing classified, nothing that should make her nervous around her own husband. But lately, everything about her had changed. She'd been staying late at the office, claiming budget meetings that ran past midnight. Her laptop was suddenly password protected. She jumped every time I entered a room, quickly closing browser windows and turning her screen away from me. The woman I'd married 8 years ago was disappearing, replaced by someone secretive and distant. Rachel used to share everything with me, her day, her frustrations, her dreams. Now she barely made eye contact during our morning coffee. Last Tuesday, I found a burner phone hidden in her jewelry box while looking for my grandmother's ring she'd borrowed. A cheap flip phone with only one contact saved. My military training kicked in. Something was very wrong. I work on classified projects for Space Command, specifically anti-gravity propulsion systems that could revolutionize both space exploration and defense capabilities. The technology I'm developing could power spacecraft that move like nothing humanity has ever seen before. It's also the kind of technology that could level entire cities if weaponized. The project is so classified that only 12 people in the entire country know it exists. My lab is buried 300 feet underground, accessible only through biometric scanners and security clearances that take years to obtain. So when I started noticing Rachel asking innocent questions about my work, questions she'd never asked before, my stomach began churning with dread. "How was the lab today, honey?" she'd ask, her voice too casual, her eyes too focused on my response. "Just routine stuff," I'd answer, watching her face for reactions. But she'd press further. "You seem stressed lately. Is the project going well?" Rachel had never cared about the technical details of my work before. She used to joke that rocket science made her eyes glaze over. Now she was hanging on every word, asking follow-up questions that felt rehearsed. The worst part was watching the woman I loved transform into someone I didn't recognize. Rachel used to laugh at my terrible jokes, steal bites of my dessert, and fall asleep with her head on my shoulder during movies. Now she flinched when I touched her. She'd moved to the guest bedroom, claiming I snored too loudly. She'd stopped cooking our Sunday dinners together, the tradition we'd maintained since our honeymoon. I started paying closer attention to her movements, her patterns, her lies. She claimed to work late on Wednesdays, but her car wasn't in the university parking lot when I drove by at 9 p.m. She said she was attending a conference in Denver last weekend, but her credit card showed purchases at a hotel downtown, the same hotel where visiting professors stayed when lecturing at the university. The pieces were forming a picture I didn't want to see. 3 days ago, I installed a small tracking device on her car, military-grade equipment that could pinpoint her location within 3 feet. I told myself I was being paranoid, that 15 years of intelligence work had made me suspicious of everyone. But the data didn't lie. Every Wednesday for the past month, Rachel drove to the Riverside Apartments on Oak Street. She'd stay for exactly 2 hours, then return home with fast food as her alibi for being late. Yesterday, I positioned myself across the street and watched her enter apartment 4B. Through the window, I saw silhouettes of 2 people embracing. Rachel's laugh, a sound I hadn't heard directed at me in months, drifted through the evening air. The man who answered the door was tall, lean, with salt and pepper hair and wire-rimmed glasses. He looked like an academic, the type who'd publish papers on theoretical physics and drink wine at faculty mixers. When Rachel left his apartment, he kissed her goodbye on the doorstep. Not the kiss of new lovers, but the comfortable intimacy of people who'd been together for months. I sat in my car watching my wife drive away from another man's arms, feeling something inside me crack apart. But the real devastation came this morning when I finally accessed her phone. Rachel had left it charging on the kitchen counter while she showered. The first time in weeks she'd let it out of her sight. My hands were steady as I entered her passcode, muscle memory from watching her type it hundreds of times. Our wedding anniversary. The betrayal went deeper than adultery. Hidden beneath folders of seemingly innocent photos were encrypted messaging apps I'd never seen before. Military-grade encryption that required specialized software to even access. And there, in black and white, were conversations that made my blood run cold. Messages about my work schedule, details about the lab's security protocols, even photographs of classified documents I'd brought home to review. Rachel wasn't just cheating on me. She was selling our country's most dangerous secrets to people who wanted to use them against us. The final message was time-stamped 20 minutes ago. Package ready for delivery tomorrow night. Target will be unconscious. Access codes confirmed. My hands trembled as I scrolled through more encrypted messages on Rachel's phone. The shower was still running upstairs, giving me precious minutes to uncover the full scope of her betrayal. The contact labeled D wasn't just her lover. He was the orchestrator of something much darker. Professor Daniel Cross, Theoretical Physics Department, read his faculty bio when I searched his name online. Distinguished career, published researcher, guest lecturer at international conferences. The perfect cover for a traitor. But it was the message thread from 2 weeks ago that shattered whatever remained of my world. Tyler's anti-gravity prototype enters final testing phase Monday. He's been working 16-hour days. Perfect time to extract the core equations. Are you certain about the sedative dosage? We can't afford mistakes. Relax, baby. I've been slipping small amounts into his coffee for weeks. He thinks he's just tired from work. Tomorrow night, I'll use enough to keep him unconscious for hours. My coffee. Every morning for the past month, Rachel had been so thoughtful, bringing me my favorite blend with extra cream. I'd praised her for being such a caring wife while she was slowly poisoning me. The nausea hit like a freight train. Those headaches I'd been having, the unusual fatigue, the way I'd been falling into such deep sleep that even my military-trained senses couldn't wake me. It wasn't stress from work. My own wife had been drugging me. I scrolled further back, finding the beginning of their conspiracy. The messages started 6 months ago, innocent at first. Daniel had approached her at a university fundraiser where I'd accompanied her as her date. Beautiful evening with a beautiful woman. Your husband is lucky. Rachel had been flattered by the attention from the distinguished professor. Their conversations began as intellectual discussions about science and philosophy. Daniel was sophisticated, charming, everything Rachel claimed I wasn't after years of military life. But I could see exactly when the seduction turned into recruitment. Your husband's work could change the world, Rachel. Imagine if that technology was used for peace instead of war. Tyler would never discuss classified projects with me. A man shares everything with the woman he truly loves. Perhaps he doesn't trust you the way you deserve. Daniel had played her perfectly, using her insecurities about our marriage to turn her against everything I stood for. He'd convinced her that stealing military secrets was somehow noble, that she was saving the world from American imperialism. What Rachel didn't know was that Daniel Cross wasn't working alone. Buried deeper in the message history were communications with other contacts, people with names like Phoenix, Viper, and Shadow. The language they used wasn't the philosophical rhetoric Daniel fed Rachel. These messages were cold, calculating, focused on one goal: obtaining anti-gravity technology to build weapons. American space superiority ends when we deliver the Harrison specifications. Moscow is prepared to pay $50 million for complete schematics. Beijing requests confirmation of delivery date. Their aerospace division is standing by. Tehran Cell confirms receipt of preliminary data. They're already beginning prototype development. Rachel thought she was helping one man impress his academic colleagues. In reality, she was facilitating the sale of American military secrets to our greatest enemies. The shower shut off upstairs. I had maybe 3 minutes before Rachel came down for breakfast. I quickly photographed every message, every contact, every piece of evidence I could find. My military training kicked in, document everything, trust no one, prepare for the worst-case scenario. But as I heard Rachel's footsteps on the stairs, I realized the worst case wasn't just about national security anymore. Tomorrow night, according to their plan, Rachel would drug me unconscious while Daniel and his terrorist cell accessed my laboratory. They weren't just planning to steal my research. The final messages made their true intentions crystal clear. Once we have the anti-gravity specifications, eliminate Tyler. Make it look like a lab accident. Dead scientists can't rebuild what they've created. Won't that arouse suspicion? Military contractors die in explosions all the time. Hazardous work. The widow's grief will seem perfectly natural. Rachel wasn't just betraying me. She was planning to murder me. "Morning, honey," she said, walking into the kitchen with that same sweet smile she'd worn for 8 years. "I made your favorite coffee." She handed me the mug, her fingers brushing mine in a gesture that once would have made my heart skip. Now I saw it for what it was, the touch of an assassin delivering poison to her target. "Thanks, sweetheart," I managed to say, my voice surprisingly steady. "You're always so thoughtful." I pretended to take a sip while my mind raced through possibilities. Rachel was watching me carefully, probably calculating how long the sedative would take to affect me. "Big day at the lab today?" she asked, her tone casual, but her eyes focused. "Just routine testing." I lied, the same way she'd been lying to me for months. Nothing too exciting. But inside, I was already forming a plan. Rachel and Daniel thought they were playing chess while I was playing checkers. They had no idea that 15 years of military intelligence had taught me how to turn the hunter into the hunted. If they wanted my anti-gravity technology, I'd give it to them. Just not the way they expected. As Rachel busied herself with breakfast preparations, humming softly like the loving wife she'd never actually been, I poured the drugged coffee down the sink when she wasn't looking. Tonight would be their last night of believing they held all the cards. Tomorrow, they discover what happens when you try to crush a space commander who's spent his entire career crushing threats to America. The rest of that day passed in a blur of calculated normalcy. I went to work, ran my usual tests, attended my scheduled meetings, all while my mind churned through the details of Rachel's betrayal and my response. By evening, I had a plan that would give Daniel and his terrorist cell exactly what they thought they wanted. Rachel was unusually attentive during dinner, refilling my wine glass and asking about my day with the kind of interest she hadn't shown in months. Every gesture felt rehearsed, every smile calculated to keep me relaxed and unsuspecting. "You seem tired, honey," she said, reaching across the table to touch my forehead. "Maybe you should get some rest early tonight." "Actually, I was thinking the same thing," I replied, playing my part perfectly. "This project has been draining me. I might take a sleeping pill and really crash hard tonight." Her eyes lit up with barely concealed excitement. "That's a great idea. You work so hard. You deserve a good night's sleep." What Rachel didn't know was that I'd spent the afternoon preparing for their infiltration. While she thought I was at routine meetings, I was actually modifying every piece of equipment in my laboratory. The anti-gravity device they planned to steal would indeed be functional for exactly 17 minutes. After that, the modified power core would create a localized gravitational field strong enough to trap anyone within a 30-foot radius. I'd also installed hidden cameras throughout the lab, military-grade recording equipment that would capture everything in night vision. By tomorrow morning, I'd have video evidence of Rachel and Daniel committing treason against the United States. But the most important modification was to the laboratory's security system itself. My clearance level allowed me to override certain protocols in emergency situations. Tomorrow night, when Rachel used my stolen access codes, the lab would appear to function normally. In reality, every door would lock automatically once the intruders were inside. They'd be trapped in an underground bunker with no communication to the outside world, surrounded by evidence of their crimes, waiting for military security to arrive. "I think I'll head up now," I announced after dinner, stretching dramatically. "This exhaustion is really hitting me hard." Rachel practically bounced with anticipation. "I'll clean up down here. You go get that rest you need." I kissed her goodnight, the kiss of a condemned woman, though she didn't know it yet. Her lips felt cold against mine, the touch of someone who'd already decided I was going to die. Upstairs, I made a show of taking a sleeping pill, washing it down with water while Rachel watched from the doorway. What she saw was her husband sedating himself for easy disposal. What actually happened was me palming the pill and swallowing nothing but water. "Sweet dreams, Tyler," she whispered, her voice carrying an edge that made my skin crawl. I lay in bed with my eyes closed, listening to Rachel move around the house below. At 11 p.m., I heard her make a phone call. "He's out cold," she whispered. "Took the sleeping pill on top of the coffee. We'll have ours." "Perfect. I'll be there at midnight with the equipment. Make sure the garage door is open." Daniel's voice carried clearly through the thin walls. In 30 minutes, my wife's lover would be in my home, preparing to steal military secrets and murder me in my sleep. But I had one more surprise waiting for them. At 11:45 p.m., I heard a car pull into our driveway. Rachel opened the garage door, and Daniel entered our home carrying what looked like sophisticated scanning equipment and a large duffel bag. "Is he still unconscious?" Daniel asked. "Haven't heard a sound. The sedative I've been giving him makes him sleep like the dead." The irony in her choice of words wasn't lost on me. I listened as they discussed their plan in detail. Daniel would use my access codes to enter the laboratory while Rachel monitored my condition upstairs. They'd copy all the anti-gravity research, planned explosive devices to destroy the lab, then return to kill me and stage my death as a tragic accident. "After tonight, we'll be $50 million richer, and America will lose its greatest military advantage," Daniel said. "Your husband's technology will belong to countries that know how to use it properly." "Tyler always said his work was about protecting America," Rachel replied. "He never understood that America is the real threat to world peace." Hearing my wife speak about my life's work with such contempt was almost worse than discovering her affair. She'd taken everything I'd ever believed in and twisted it into justification for treason. At midnight exactly, they made their move. Rachel crept upstairs to check on me one final time. I controlled my breathing, keeping it deep and steady like someone heavily sedated. She stood in the doorway for a full minute, probably making sure I was truly unconscious. "All clear," she whispered into her phone. "He's completely out." Daniel's voice crackled through the speaker. "Beginning laboratory infiltration now. Monitor his vital signs remotely. If he shows any signs of waking up, inject him with the additional sedative." They had a backup plan to drug me further if needed. These weren't amateurs. They were professional operatives who'd been planning this operation for months. But they'd made one critical error. They assumed a space commander who'd spent 15 years protecting classified military technology wouldn't have contingency plans for exactly this type of betrayal. As Daniel used my stolen access codes to enter the laboratory 300 feet below our house, every step of his infiltration was being recorded in high definition. When he connected his scanning equipment to my computers, he was unknowingly downloading modified files that would trace back to every device in his terrorist network. And when he activated the anti-gravity device to test its functionality, he set in motion a chain of events that would crush everyone involved in this conspiracy. The real show was about to begin. At 12:47 a.m., I heard Daniel's voice through Rachel's phone, excitement barely contained in his whisper. "I'm in. The laboratory is incredible. This technology is decades ahead of anything I imagined." Rachel was positioned at our bedroom window, watching for any signs that I might be stirring. What she didn't know was that I'd been awake for hours, listening to every word of their treason through the military-grade surveillance equipment I'd secretly installed in our own home. "How long until you have everything?" Rachel asked. "Give me 20 more minutes to download the core files. Then another hour to plant the explosive charges. By 3 a.m., we'll be millionaires and your husband will be history." Through my hidden cameras, I watched Daniel connect his equipment to my primary workstation. He was methodical, professional. This wasn't his first theft of classified technology. But his arrogance was about to become his downfall. Every file he copied contained embedded tracking codes that would ping the location of any device that accessed them. When Daniel's terrorist network tried to open the stolen data, they'd unknowingly reveal the locations of every cell operating in North America. But more importantly, Daniel had just activated the modified power core I'd spent all day preparing. The anti-gravity device hummed to life exactly as designed. For the next 17 minutes, it would function perfectly, giving Daniel confidence that he'd stolen functional technology. He'd run preliminary tests, maybe even levitate a few objects to confirm the device's capabilities. What he couldn't see was the microscopic modification I'd made to the gravitational field generator, a tiny adjustment that would reverse the device's polarity after exactly 17 minutes of operation. Instead of creating controlled anti-gravity fields, the device would generate an inescapable gravitational well, pulling everything within 30 feet toward the center with crushing force. "Tyler's still unconscious," Rachel reported. "Breathing is slow and steady. The sedative is working perfectly." I had to admire her attention to detail. Even while committing treason, Rachel was monitoring my vital signs to ensure their timeline stayed on track. She'd always been thorough. It's one of the qualities that made me fall in love with her 8 years ago. Now that same thoroughness was being used to plan my murder. Through the laboratory cameras, I watched Daniel photograph classified documents, copy hard drives, and test various components of the anti-gravity system. He moved with the confidence of someone who believed they held all the advantages. At 1:15 a.m., Daniel made a fatal mistake. "Rachel, tell our contacts the technology is even better than we hoped. This isn't just anti-gravity. Tyler has created a device that can manipulate gravitational fields with surgical precision. In the wrong hands, this could level entire cities. In the wrong hands." Rachel laughed softly. "Danny, we are the wrong hands. Beijing is paying us to put this technology in the wrong hands." Their casual discussion of mass destruction made my blood boil. They weren't just betraying me. They were planning to give hostile nations the ability to commit genocide using my life's work. That's when I decided to accelerate my timeline. Moving silently through our house, I made my way to the basement access panel for the laboratory's emergency systems. Rachel was so focused on monitoring my supposedly unconscious form that she never heard me leave the bedroom. My security clearance allowed me to override the laboratory's automatic lockdown protocols. With a few keystrokes, I activated what the military calls a hostile containment scenario. Every exit would seal, all communications would be blocked, and the facility would become an impenetrable prison. Daniel had 3 minutes before those systems engaged. But first, I wanted them to confess everything on camera. Using my command authorization, I activated the laboratory's intercom system. Daniel was still downloading files when my voice echoed through the underground chamber. "Hello, Professor Cross. I hope you're finding everything you need." The scanning equipment crashed to the floor as Daniel spun around in terror. Through the cameras, I could see him frantically looking for the source of my voice. "Tyler." Rachel's panicked whisper crackled through her phone. "You're supposed to be unconscious. I've been awake all night, listening to you plan my murder." I replied, my voice calm and steady despite the rage burning in my chest. "Did you really think 15 years of military intelligence wouldn't prepare me for betrayal by my own wife?" Daniel was already running toward the laboratory exit, but he was 15 seconds too late. The blast doors sealed with a finality that echoed through the chamber like a death knell. "Rachel, he's trapped us." Daniel's voice was high with panic. "The doors are locked. Communications are down. We're stuck down here." Through the bedroom camera, I watched my wife's face transform from confusion to understanding to pure terror. She finally realized that her sedated, helpless husband had been playing a game several moves ahead of her conspiracy. "Tyler, please," she begged into her phone. "I can explain everything. It's not what you think." "It's exactly what I think," I replied. "You've been poisoning me for weeks, selling military secrets to foreign terrorists, and planning to murder me tonight. The only question left is whether you want to confess everything on camera or wait for the military tribunal to extract the truth from you." Daniel was now frantically trying to access the anti-gravity device, probably hoping to use it to break through the sealed doors. He had no idea that in less than 2 minutes, that same device would become his prison warden. "The explosive charges," he shouted to Rachel. "If I detonate them now, maybe I can blast through." "Professor Cross," I interrupted, "I wouldn't recommend that. The laboratory is designed to contain nuclear-grade explosions. You'll only succeed in killing yourself faster." But Daniel wasn't listening. Desperation had replaced professionalism, and he was making increasingly erratic decisions, which was exactly what I'd counted on. Daniel's panic was escalating by the second. Through the laboratory cameras, I watched him frantically examining the sealed blast doors, looking for any weakness he could exploit. The explosive charges he'd planned to use for destroying evidence were now his only hope of escape. "Rachel, how long until the backup team arrives?" he shouted into his phone. "There is no backup team," I announced through the intercom, enjoying the look of horror that crossed his face. "Your terrorist cell thinks you're still gathering intelligence. They have no idea you've been compromised." The truth was even worse for Daniel. While he'd been downloading my files, I'd been uploading tracking viruses into his equipment. Every device in his network was now broadcasting its location to military intelligence. His entire operation would be rolling up within hours. But Rachel was still free in our house, and I could hear her moving around frantically upstairs. "Tyler, please," she begged through her phone. "Let me explain." Daniel told me this was about preventing war, about keeping dangerous technology from being weaponized. "Rachel, I've read your messages," I interrupted. "You knew exactly what you were doing. You discussed payment schedules with foreign agents. You calculated how much sedative to use to keep me unconscious. You even picked out which insurance policy would pay the most when I died in an accidental lab explosion." Through the bedroom camera, I watched her sink onto our bed, finally understanding that her months of deception had been completely transparent to me. Daniel, meanwhile, had made a critical error. In his desperation to escape, he'd activated the anti-gravity device to maximum power, hoping to somehow use it to break through the reinforced doors. What he didn't realize was that he'd just triggered the 17-minute countdown to his own imprisonment. "The gravitational field is incredible," he called to Rachel, excitement temporarily overriding his panic. "Tyler's technology is working perfectly. Even at full power, the device maintains complete stability." I checked my watch, 2:11 a.m. Daniel had exactly 6 minutes before the modified power core reversed polarity and turned his escape tool into his cage. "Professor Cross," I said through the intercom, "I'm curious about something. How did you recruit my wife?" Daniel paused in his frantic searching, perhaps recognizing that conversation might buy him time to find a solution. "Rachel was lonely," he replied, his academic arrogance returning despite his circumstances. "Married to a military man who treated his work as more important than his wife. She craved intellectual stimulation, meaningful conversation about the larger implications of scientific discovery. So you seduced her with philosophy and treason." I opened her eyes to the truth about American imperialism. "Your government hoards technology that could benefit all of humanity, using it instead to maintain global dominance through threat of force." I had to laugh at his self-righteousness. and selling that technology to Beijing, Moscow, and Tehran will somehow benefit humanity? Those governments understand that advanced technology should be shared, not monopolized by a single nation that's been at war for most of its existence. Rachel's voice crackled through the phone. Tyler, he convinced me that stopping America's military expansion was the right thing to do. I thought we were preventing future wars, not starting them. Rachel, you discussed using my anti-gravity technology to build weapons capable of leveling cities. You knew exactly what you were enabling. Through the cameras, I could see Daniel had found the laboratory's emergency communication panel. He was frantically trying to override the communications blackout, probably hoping to call for extraction from his terrorist handlers. What he didn't know was that I'd rerouted all emergency communications through military intelligence. Every call he attempted would go directly to the people hunting his network. The communications array is damaged, he muttered, examining the panel. Tyler must have sabotaged it before locking us down. 3 minutes until gravitational reversal. Daniel, I said through the intercom, I want you to understand something. The anti-gravity device you're so impressed with? I modified it specifically for tonight. He froze, finally understanding that his admiration for my technology might be premature. What kind of modifications? The kind that turn an anti-gravity generator into a gravity well. In about 3 minutes, that device will begin pulling everything in the laboratory toward the center with approximately 15 times normal gravitational force. Daniel's face went white as the implications hit him. You're bluffing. No one would design a doomsday device in their own laboratory. I'm not planning to be in the laboratory when it activates, I replied. But you are. Through the bedroom camera, I watched Rachel realize what was happening. She was running through the house now, probably looking for some way to help Daniel escape before my trap closed completely. Tyler, you can't do this, she pleaded. Whatever Daniel has done, killing him won't solve anything. I'm not killing him, Rachel. I'm letting physics kill him. There's a difference. Daniel was now using the explosive charges to try blasting through the laboratory's reinforced walls. Each detonation shook the entire facility, but the military-grade construction held firm. He was only wasting time and oxygen. 2 minutes until activation. Professor Cross, I announced, you have 2 choices. You can spend your remaining time trying to escape, or you can use it to confess your crimes on camera. The recording might help reduce the sentences of your co-conspirators when military intelligence rolls up your entire network. Daniel stopped his frantic escape attempts and looked directly at the nearest camera. Commander Harrison, he said with surprising dignity, I regret that your wife became collateral damage in a necessary operation. But your technology in the hands of a single government poses an existential threat to global stability. My technology in the hands of terrorist organizations poses an existential threat to global survival, I countered. 1 minute remaining. The anti-gravity device was humming at maximum power, creating beautiful displays of gravitational manipulation throughout the laboratory. Daniel was mesmerized despite his circumstances, watching objects float and dance in defiance of natural law. He had no idea he was watching the last minute of his freedom. At exactly 2:17 a.m., the anti-gravity device reached the end of its 17-minute functional cycle. Daniel was still staring in fascination at the floating equipment when the gravitational field suddenly reversed. The beautiful dance of weightless objects instantly became a terrifying vortex as everything in the laboratory began accelerating toward the device's core. What's happening? Daniel screamed as his feet left the ground. The modified power core had created what physicists call a localized gravitational anomaly, essentially a miniature black hole that pulled everything within 30 feet toward its center with irresistible force. Daniel's scanning equipment, the explosive charges, loose cables, chairs, even the air itself. Everything was being drawn into an inescapable spiral around the anti-gravity generator. Tyler, stop this. Rachel's voice was hysterical through the phone. He's going to die? No, he's going to be trapped, I corrected. The gravitational field is calibrated to create orbital mechanics, not crushing force. He'll be held in a stable orbit around the device, conscious but completely immobilized. Through the cameras, I watched Daniel struggle against the inexorable pull of artificial gravity. He managed to grab onto a support beam, his body horizontal as the gravitational field tried to drag him toward the device. But the real beauty of my modification wasn't just the gravitational trap, it was the psychological effect. Daniel was suspended in a living demonstration of the technology he'd tried to steal. Every second, he experienced firsthand the incredible power of the anti-gravity system that could have revolutionized space travel if he hadn't tried to turn it into a weapon. "Commander Harrison," Daniel gasped, fighting to speak against the gravitational forces. "You've created something magnificent. This technology could change everything: space exploration, transportation, energy generation. Why keep it locked away?" "Because men like you exist," I replied through the intercom. "You see revolutionary technology and immediately think about how to weaponize it. You turn tools of exploration into instruments of destruction." Rachel was now pounding on the basement access door, trying to reach the laboratory controls. What she didn't know was that only my biometric clearance could override the containment protocols. "Tyler, let me down there," she pleaded. "I can help him." "Rachel, the woman who's been poisoning me for weeks wants to help someone? That's rich." Through the bedroom camera, I could see her face crumpling with the weight of her choices. The sophisticated seduction that Daniel had orchestrated was falling apart, leaving her to confront the reality of her betrayal. "I never wanted anyone to die," she sobbed. "Daniel said we were preventing wars, stopping American aggression. He made it sound noble. He made it sound profitable." I corrected. $50 million from foreign governments. That's what my life was worth to you. In the laboratory, Daniel had managed to wedge himself into a corner where structural supports created a small pocket of reduced gravitational force. He was still trapped, but no longer being pulled directly toward the device. "Your wife genuinely believed she was doing the right thing," Daniel called out, his voice strained but audible. "I convinced her that American technological dominance was a threat to world peace." "And what did you tell Beijing, Moscow, and Tehran? That they needed my technology for peaceful purposes?" Daniel's academic mask finally slipped completely. "I told them whatever they needed to hear to pay for the technology. Politics is irrelevant. Scientific advancement belongs to all humanity, not a single nation. Scientific advancement that you plan to sell to the highest bidder. Money is just a tool for funding further research. Do you think your government's military budget serves humanity better than international scientific cooperation?" I had to admire Daniel's ability to rationalize treason as altruism, even while trapped in a gravitational field of his own making. But Rachel's voice through the phone brought me back to the immediate situation. "Tyler, I know I betrayed you. I know I deserve whatever punishment you think is right. But please don't let Daniel die because of my mistakes." "Daniel isn't going to die, Rachel. But he is going to spend the rest of his life in a military prison, along with every member of his terrorist network." Through the cameras, I could see Daniel testing the boundaries of his gravitational prison. The field was stable, holding him in a fixed position relative to the anti-gravity device, but he could move slightly within a confined space. "How long will this containment last?" he asked. "The power core will maintain this gravitational field for approximately 72 hours, I replied. "Long enough for military security to arrive and process both the laboratory and our house for evidence. And then you'll discover what happens when you commit treason against the United States while threatening the family of a space commander." Rachel's phone buzzed with an incoming call. Through the surveillance system, I could hear both sides of the conversation. "Rachel, what's your status?" The voice was heavily accented, possibly Russian. "Everything's gone wrong," Rachel whispered. "Tyler knew about the operation. Daniel is trapped in the laboratory. Then activate the termination protocol." Eliminate all evidence and extract immediately. I can't. Tyler has control of everything. The laboratory is sealed, communications are down, and Daniel is. He's caught in some kind of gravitational trap. A long pause. Then, the operation is compromised. You're on your own. The line went dead. Rachel stared at her phone in shock, finally understanding that her terrorist handlers viewed her as completely expendable. Tyler, she said softly, they've abandoned me. Just like you abandoned me, I replied. The only difference is that I'm offering you a choice they never gave you. Rachel's abandoned phone lay silent on our bedroom floor, a perfect symbol of how disposable she'd been to the terrorist network she thought she was serving. Through the surveillance cameras, I watched her process the reality that her handlers had cut her loose the moment the operation failed. What choice? She asked quietly, her voice hollow with defeat. You can run, I replied through the intercom system. Pack whatever you can carry and disappear before military security arrives. I'll give you a 30-minute head start. And if I don't run, then you'll face a military tribunal for treason, espionage, and conspiracy to commit murder. Life in federal prison, assuming they don't decide to make an example of you. In the laboratory, Daniel was still trapped in his gravitational orbit, but I could see him listening intently to our conversation. His academic mind was probably analyzing every word, looking for weaknesses in my position. Commander Harrison, Daniel called out. What makes you think Rachel has any choice at all? Your security systems have surely recorded her vehicle leaving the property dozens of times. Satellite surveillance, traffic cameras, credit card records. She can't simply disappear. He was right, of course. Rachel's involvement in the conspiracy had left a digital trail that military intelligence could follow across continents. But I wasn't offering her escape. I was offering her a chance to choose how her story ended. Tyler, Rachel said softly, why would you give me any choice at all? After everything I've done? Because 15 years ago, I promised to love you for better or worse. I never expected worse to include treason and attempted murder, but apparently my vows were more binding than yours. Through the cameras, I watched her sink onto our bed, the same bed where we'd planned our future, shared our dreams, made love as husband and wife. Now it was just a piece of furniture in the home of a traitor. I loved you, she whispered. I still love you. Daniel made me believe that what we were doing was bigger than us, more important than our marriage. You love the idea of being important, I corrected. Daniel made you feel like you were changing the world instead of just coordinating university budgets. But love doesn't involve poisoning someone's coffee for weeks. In the laboratory, something had changed. Daniel was no longer struggling against the gravitational field. He was studying it, examining the way objects moved within the artificial gravity well. Remarkable, he murmured, apparently forgetting his predicament in favor of scientific fascination. Tyler, the precision of this gravitational manipulation is beyond anything in current literature. How did you achieve such fine control over spatial distortion? Years of work that you'll never get to study, I replied. That technology dies with me. You can't be serious. This could revolutionize physics, astronomy, transportation. The applications are limitless. So is the potential for destruction in the wrong hands. You've proven that tonight. Rachel's phone buzzed with a text message. Through the surveillance system, I could see the contents. Emergency extraction point activated. Highway 94 overpass, 30 minutes. Come alone or don't come at all. They're offering you one last chance, I observed. Interesting that they have contingency plans for agent extraction. Rachel stared at the message, then at the phone, then at the bedroom camera where she knew I was watching. Tyler, if I run, I'll spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder. If I stay, I'll spend it in prison. Either way, I've lost everything that ever mattered to me. You lost at the moment you chose treason over marriage. I chose what I thought was right over what I knew was comfortable, she replied, her voice gaining strength. Daniel showed me how American military power affects the rest of the world. The wars, the interventions, the threats. all backed by technology like yours. And you decided that giving that same technology to America's enemies would somehow create peace. I decided that no single nation should have the power to dominate all others. In the laboratory, Daniel had apparently reached the same conclusion as his co-conspirator. Commander Harrison, your anti-gravity technology represents a quantum leap in military capability. In American hands, it guarantees continued global hegemony. In international hands, it creates balance. In terrorist hands, it creates mass graves, I countered. Your network was planning to sell this technology to regimes that execute political dissidents and commit genocide against their own people. All governments commit atrocities when they have overwhelming power, Daniel replied. Balance creates restraint. I checked the time, 3:15 a.m. Military security would arrive at dawn, summoned by the automatic alerts triggered when I activated the laboratory's containment protocols. Rachel had 45 minutes to decide her fate. Rachel, I said through the intercom, I want you to understand something. The choice I'm giving you isn't about mercy. It's about justice. I don't understand the difference. Mercy would be letting you disappear without consequences. Justice is letting you choose your consequences. Run and spend your life as a fugitive, always wondering when they'll find you. Stay and face the legal system you betrayed, but face it with whatever dignity you have left. Through the laboratory cameras, I could see Daniel had managed to position himself near the device's control panel. He was studying the readouts, probably trying to understand how to reverse the gravitational field. Professor Cross, I announced. I should mention that tampering with the device while it's maintaining a gravitational field would likely result in an exponential increase in gravitational force. Instead of being trapped in orbit, you'd be crushed into the approximate size of a marble. Daniel's hand froze inches from the control panel. You're bluffing. I'm a physicist. I don't bluff about gravitational forces that could compress human tissue into dense matter. Rachel's phone buzzed again. 20 minutes until extraction window closes. Decide now. She looked directly at the camera, tears streaming down her face. Tyler, what would you do? I would face the consequences of my choices with honor, I replied. But then again, I would never have made your choices in the first place. At 3:32 a.m., Rachel made her decision. She walked to our bedroom closet and pulled out a small suitcase, the same one we'd used for our honeymoon 8 years ago. Through the surveillance cameras, I watched her pack methodically. Essential documents, cash she'd hidden in various locations, a few changes of clothes. I'm running, she announced to the camera. I can't face spending the rest of my life in prison for choices I'm not even sure I believe in anymore. Then you've chosen to live as a fugitive rather than face justice with dignity. I've chosen to live, period. She paused at our wedding photo on the dresser, touching the glass with trembling fingers. Tyler, I want you to know that I did love you. Daniel convinced me that love sometimes requires betraying the people we care about for a greater good. Daniel convinced you that $50 million was worth more than your marriage. Rachel didn't argue. She couldn't. In the laboratory, Daniel had been listening to every word through his phone connection. Even trapped in an artificial gravitational field, he was still trying to manipulate the situation. Rachel, don't let him guilt you into surrendering, Daniel called out. We were trying to prevent future wars. History will vindicate our actions. History will record you as traitors who sold military secrets to enemy nations, I replied. But it won't matter what history says, you won't be around to read it. At 3:45 a.m., my secure military phone buzzed with an encrypted message from Colonel Sarah Martinez at Space Command Intelligence. Harrison, Operation Nightfall successful. Tracking viruses deployed. 12 terror cells compromised across 6 nations. Arrests coordinating with international partners. ETA your location, 0600 hours. The tracking codes I'd embedded in Daniel's stolen files had worked exactly as designed. When his terrorist network tried to access the downloaded technology, they'd unknowingly revealed their locations to military intelligence agencies worldwide. Beijing, Moscow, Tehran. Every destination for my stolen research was about to receive unexpected visitors from their respective counterintelligence services. The international implications would be significant, but that wasn't my immediate concern. Rachel was loading her suitcase into her car when the next message arrived. Highway 94 overpass compromised. Enemy extraction team neutralized. Subject vehicle being tracked by satellite. No escape routes available. I activated the garage intercom system. Rachel, you need to hear this. She froze beside her car, probably recognizing the tone in my voice. The extraction point your handlers offered you? It was a military trap. There is no escape route. They were planning to eliminate you as a loose end. Through the security camera, I watched her face process this information. The sophisticated international terrorist network she thought she was serving had been feeding her to American intelligence from the moment their operation was compromised. That's impossible, she whispered. Your phone has been broadcasting your location to military satellites for the past hour. Every message from your handlers was monitored and analyzed. They weren't offering you extraction, they were offering you elimination. Rachel sank against her car, finally understanding the full scope of her manipulation. Daniel had seduced her with philosophy and ideology, but his network had viewed her as completely expendable from the beginning. Daniel, she called through her phone. Did you know? Did you know they were planning to kill me? From the laboratory, Daniel's voice was strangely quiet. Rachel, operational security requires difficult decisions. You were never supposed to survive tonight anyway. The words hit her like physical blows. Even as she'd been planning my murder, her co-conspirators had been planning hers. The sedative you were giving Tyler, Daniel continued, wasn't just to keep him unconscious during the theft. The final dose tonight would have been lethal. We couldn't risk leaving witnesses who knew operational details. Rachel's phone slipped from her nerveless fingers, clattering on the garage floor. You were going to kill both of us, she breathed. Necessary casualties for the greater good, Daniel replied, his academic detachment chilling even through the intercom system. I could see Rachel's world collapsing in real time. The man who'd convinced her to betray everything she'd once valued had never intended for her to survive the betrayal. At 4:15 a.m., military vehicles began surrounding our property. Through the security perimeter cameras, I could see special operations teams establishing containment positions around the house and laboratory access points. Rachel, I said through the intercom, you have about 30 seconds before this house is breached by military security. Last chance to surrender with whatever dignity you have left. She looked up at the bedroom camera, her face streaked with tears and mascara. Tyler, I'm sorry. I know that doesn't mean anything now, but I need you to know that I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't resurrect dead soldiers who would have died if your stolen technology had been weaponized. I never wanted anyone to die, but you were willing to kill me to get what you wanted. Rachel had no answer for that truth. The garage door exploded inward as special operations breached the house. Through multiple camera angles, I watched tactical teams sweep through our home with military precision, securing every room and corridor. Rachel raised her hands in surrender as armed soldiers surrounded her, their night vision equipment and assault rifles trained on the woman who'd shared my bed for 8 years. Tyler Harrison, this is Colonel Martinez, came the voice through my secure phone. We have your location secured. Where are you? Master bedroom, Colonel. The primary target is contained in the underground laboratory. Copy that. We're seeing some unusual energy readings from the laboratory level. That would be the anti-gravity containment field holding Professor Cross in place. He's conscious but immobilized. Understood. Stand by for debrief. As military personnel secured Rachel and began processing the house for evidence, I realized that the most dangerous part of this operation was about to begin. Daniel's terrorist network might have been compromised, but desperate people make unpredictable choices. And I still had one more surprise waiting for anyone who thought they could steal my life's work. Colonel Martinez entered the master bedroom at 4:47 a.m., flanked by two special operations officers. She was a compact woman with steel gray hair and the bearing of someone who'd spent decades making life and death decisions without hesitation. "Commander Harrison," she said, extending her hand. "Outstanding work tonight. The intelligence windfall from this operation will cripple terrorist networks across 3 continents." "Thank you, Colonel. What's the status on the arrests?" "Beijing picked up 6 operatives attempting to access the tracking-coded files. Moscow neutralized 4 terrorist cells before they could destroy evidence. Tehran's intelligence service has requested American assistance in processing the data we provided about their compromised networks." I nodded, satisfied that the international implications were being handled properly. But my attention was focused on the woman being processed in handcuffs downstairs, my wife, who'd chosen treason over marriage and murder over love. "What happens to Rachel?" I asked. Colonel Martinez consulted her tablet. "Espionage, conspiracy to commit treason, conspiracy to commit murder of a federal officer, and violation of the National Defense Authorization Act. She's looking at life without parole, assuming the prosecution doesn't seek the death penalty." Through the bedroom window, I could see Rachel being loaded into an armored transport vehicle. She looked small and broken, nothing like the confident woman who'd been planning my death just hours earlier. "I need to make a decision about her fate," I said. "Commander, with respect, that decision isn't yours to make. She's committed federal crimes that threaten national security. But I have information that could influence her sentencing." Colonel Martinez raised an eyebrow. "What kind of information?" "Evidence that she was psychologically manipulated by Professor Cross, that she believed she was preventing wars rather than enabling them, and that her terrorist handlers planned to eliminate her regardless of the operation's success." "You're suggesting she was a victim rather than a willing participant?" I considered the question carefully. Rachel had made her choices, but those choices had been influenced by sophisticated psychological manipulation designed to exploit her insecurities about our marriage and her desire to feel important. "I'm suggesting she was a useful idiot rather than a committed terrorist," I replied. "There's a legal difference. In the laboratory, Daniel was still trapped in the gravitational field, but military engineers were preparing to safely disable the anti-gravity device. Through the cameras, I could see him discussing technical specifications with the engineering team, apparently hoping that cooperation might improve his situation. It wouldn't. "Colonel, what happens to Cross?" "Military tribunal, followed by life in the most secure federal facility we operate. His knowledge of international terrorist networks makes him too valuable for execution, but too dangerous for standard incarceration. And his academic career? Erased. Every paper he published will be reviewed for security implications. His university position is terminated, his security clearances revoked, his research confiscated." Through the intercom system, I could hear Daniel still trying to negotiate with the military engineers. "Gentlemen, the gravitational mathematics involved in this containment system represent a breakthrough in theoretical physics. I could provide detailed analysis of the field equations in exchange for consideration during sentencing." "Professor Cross," I said through the intercom, "you have nothing to offer that I haven't already provided to my government. Your cooperation is irrelevant. Tyler, surely you understand the scientific value of international collaboration. This technology could benefit all humanity if shared through proper channels. It will benefit humanity by remaining under American control, where it can't be turned into weapons of mass destruction." Colonel Martinez was reviewing files on her tablet when an urgent message appeared. Her expression darkened as she read. "Commander, we've intercepted communications indicating that Cross's network may have additional operatives attempting to breach this facility. How many? Unknown. Satellite surveillance detected 3 vehicles approaching through the forest access roads. Military contractor plates, but the vehicles aren't on any authorized transport manifests." I felt a cold smile cross my face. "Colonel, those aren't rescue operatives. They're cleanup crews. Explain. Daniel's network never intended for him or Rachel to survive tonight. They're coming to eliminate the only witnesses who can testify about international terrorist connections. Through the laboratory cameras, I could see Daniel's face when he heard this analysis through the intercom system. For the first time since his capture, he looked genuinely afraid. "That's impossible," he protested. "My organization values operational security, but they wouldn't eliminate their own people." "Professor, you told Rachel tonight that she was expendable for operational security. Did you think you were somehow special?" The approaching vehicles were now visible on perimeter cameras, black SUVs with tinted windows, moving with military precision through the forest roads that provided concealed access to my property. "Colonel, those vehicles contain people who want to prevent Daniel from testifying about his network's international connections. They'll eliminate everyone in this facility to protect their operational secrecy." "How many personnel do you estimate?" "Based on vehicle capacity and operational requirements, probably 12 to 15 highly trained operatives with military-grade equipment." Colonel Martinez was already coordinating with her tactical teams through her headset. "All stations, this is Control. We have potential hostile approach from the north access roads. Prepare defensive positions and await engagement authorization." Through the bedroom camera, I watched Rachel in the transport vehicle, unaware that her former allies were approaching to kill her. She'd chosen to serve people who viewed her life as completely expendable. "Colonel," I said, "I have one more modification to my laboratory that might be useful for dealing with uninvited guests." "What kind of modification?" "The kind that turns a defensive installation into an offensive weapon system." Outside, the approaching vehicles had stopped just beyond the perimeter of my property. Through thermal imaging, we could see armed figures preparing for assault. Rachel's terrorist handlers had made their final mistake. They'd brought weapons to a physics fight. 6 months later, I stood on the observation deck of Space Defense Station Alpha, watching Earth rotate slowly beneath us. The anti-gravity propulsion system that had nearly been stolen by terrorists now powered humanity's most advanced orbital platform, protecting American interests from threats that most people couldn't imagine. Rachel was serving life without parole at ADX Florence, the supermax prison reserved for the most dangerous federal criminals. Her psychological evaluation had confirmed what I'd suspected. She'd been systematically manipulated by Daniel Cross, but she'd also made conscious choices that resulted in treason against the United States. The military tribunal had been thorough but swift. Rachel's cooperation in dismantling the remaining terrorist network cells had earned her life imprisonment instead of execution, but nothing could restore the trust she'd shattered or the lives that would have been lost if my technology had fallen into enemy hands. Daniel Cross died during the assault on my property that night. When his terrorist handlers breached the facility's perimeter, I activated what I called the area denial modification to my anti-gravity system. Instead of creating localized gravitational fields, the device generated expanding waves of gravitational distortion that made conventional weapons and tactics completely useless. The attacking operatives found themselves unable to aim, unable to move in straight lines, unable to coordinate their assault as gravity itself became their enemy. Some were crushed by their own equipment when gravitational fields suddenly intensified. Others were flung into trees and buildings when anti-gravity pulses launched them like projectiles. Daniel, still trapped in the laboratory's gravitational well, had been directly exposed to the system's maximum output when I activated the area denial protocol. The competing gravitational forces had torn him apart at the molecular level, a death that was both instantaneous and absolute. Colonel Martinez had initially questioned the necessity of such overwhelming force, but the intelligence recovered from the terrorist assault team vindicated my decision. They'd carried enough military-grade explosives to level a city block, along with chemical weapons designed to eliminate all witnesses to their operation. My wife's terrorist allies had planned to murder everyone at the facility: military personnel, federal agents, even Rachel herself, to prevent testimony that could expose their international network. Instead, they'd encountered a space commander who understood that some threats require permanent solutions. The intelligence windfall from that night had been extraordinary. 12 terrorist networks across 6 continents had been dismantled. Foreign intelligence services had arrested over 200 operatives attempting to access my tracking-coded files. Several hostile nations had been forced to acknowledge their involvement in attempts to steal American military technology. But the most satisfying victory was personal. Rachel had spent months believing she was serving a noble cause, fighting American imperialism by sharing advanced technology with international partners. The reality was that she'd been manipulated by a terrorist network that viewed her as completely expendable, a useful tool for accessing classified information that would be eliminated the moment her usefulness ended. Her handlers had planned to murder both of us from the very beginning. There was no idealistic goal, no principled stand against military dominance, just greed, betrayal, and the cold calculation that some people's lives were worth less than others' profits. Standing on this space station, powered by the technology Rachel had tried to steal, I reflected on the choices that had led us to this moment. I'd spent 15 years protecting America from external threats, never imagining that the greatest danger would come from inside my own home. But I'd also spent those years developing the skills and technology necessary to neutralize any threat to national security, regardless of its source. Rachel had chosen to betray everything we'd built together in pursuit of something she thought was more important than our marriage. She discovered that her new allies valued her life even less than she'd valued mine. Daniel Cross had chosen to manipulate a lonely woman into committing treason, believing his academic credentials and sophisticated rhetoric made him untouchable. He'd discovered that physics doesn't care about philosophy when gravitational forces exceed human structural limits. The terrorist network had chosen to steal American military technology for profit, believing they could eliminate any witnesses to their crimes. They discovered that attacking a facility defended by anti-gravity weapons was the last mistake they'd ever make. My choice had been simpler: protect the technology that could defend America from existential threats, regardless of who tried to steal it. The anti-gravity system now defending this space station could detect and neutralize incoming missiles, disable enemy spacecraft, and create defensive fields that made traditional warfare obsolete. In the right hands, it was the ultimate peacekeeping technology. In the wrong hands, it would have been the ultimate weapon of mass destruction. 6 months ago, I'd crushed my wife and her terrorist allies with the same anti-gravity technology they'd tried to steal. The irony wasn't lost on me. They'd been destroyed by the very weapon they'd hoped to turn against America. But there was no satisfaction in that victory, only the grim knowledge that some betrayals require absolute responses. Rachel would spend the rest of her life in prison, having learned too late that the people who encourage treason are usually the first to abandon traitors when operations fail. Daniel Cross would never again manipulate lonely spouses into betraying their countries, having discovered that academic arrogance provides no protection against gravitational forces. And I would continue protecting America from threats both foreign and domestic, knowing that sometimes the most dangerous enemies are the ones who share your bed, drink your coffee, and whisper, "I love you," while planning your murder. The anti-gravity bomb had crushed more than just terrorists that night. It had crushed every illusion I'd ever held about trust, loyalty, and the people we choose to love. But America was safer because of those crushed illusions. And sometimes, that has to be enough. What did you think of Tyler's crushing revenge against his traitorous wife? Hit that like button if you enjoyed this intense betrayal story. Subscribe for more shocking tales of military justice and family betrayal. And drop a comment telling us which part shocked you most. Thanks for listening.